pleasure to have you here. We do these Lunch and Learns because our job as the Children's Museum is not only to help advance the development of children, but help parents through their child-rearing journey, which, as you know, is full of twists and turns and bumpy starts and stops, and hopefully smooth sailing to adulthood. I'm really thrilled that my oldest son, who's 30, is getting married next month. So I really do need to hear Carla talk about how to stay calm. Because this is not calm. I am not calm. But I'm just really thrilled to have her here. So let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a clinical social worker, a parent coach, author, blogger, and a mother of two. Her writing, you may have read in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Huffington Post, CNN, and Mindful Magazine. She has a bachelor's in psychology from Middlebury College, a master's in social work from Smith, and a PhD in clinical social work from Simmons. So she is highly skilled at helping overwhelmed parents find strategies to minimize stress and maximize fun. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Carla, who's going to tell us exactly how to calm down and carry on.
Thank you so much, Carol. I'm so delighted to be here. I can't believe I'm speaking at the Children's Museum. My daughters and I spent a huge amount of time in the play space, and I was really sad when they outgrew that. I also want to thank Debbie, who did just an amazing job organizing this, and Carol and the whole board of trustees and everyone who made it possible for me to come today. So when I met Carol, she said, you know, I'm not a calm person. I'm really glad you're here because you're a calm person. And I feel like I need to start by telling you guys the truth, which is that I'm not a calm person. My husband is home right now with a bad back, and our daughters, who are 8.5 and 10, were really upset about this. And I said, why are you so upset? And they said, well, Mommy, you're usually the one who falls apart. And I was like, thanks, guys. So the reason I've written 3 parenting books and gone into this work as a social worker is because I need this as much as anybody. So I've written 3 books, as I mentioned. The first one is called Parenting in the Present Moment, How to Stay Focused on What Really Matters. And I wrote that when my daughters were really young, and I felt like I was just overwhelmed by advice and suggestions. Here's what you have to do, and if you don't do this, they're going to be really messed up. And it was so overwhelming that I thought, I need to dive into the research, dive into the literature, and figure out what really matters. So that's where that book came from. The next book, Ready, Set, Breathe, which I think many of you have copies of, is really about sharing mindfulness with our kids. Because when I started to research parenting, mindfulness was something that came up as a practice that was really important for me for staying calm and for being present with my children. And so I wanted to understand more about how to share that with my young kids. And I interviewed about 30 families for that book. And that's all in the blue book you have. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But the book I'm really excited about, which you guys are actually seeing before anyone in the world except my parents and my kids and my husband and my cats, who did not appreciate it at all, is called How to Stop Losing Your Shit with Your Kids. And it doesn't exist in the world yet. This is a galley copy, so you're all getting the sneak preview of the cover. It will be published on August 20th, and it's available for pre-order on Amazon and IndieBound and all those places right now, so you can order it. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is from this book, because calm in the home really starts with us, right? This is unfortunate. I wish it started with my kids. I wish my kids would get calm, and then I could go off and do whatever I need to do, but really it starts with us. So this is what we're going to talk about. So I have a few notes here. Let's see. So all of my parenting work, in my coaching and in my writing, is focused on one thing. I want parenting to feel easier and more fun and less stressful, and I want us all to feel calmer and more connected to our children. This is a lot easier said than done, right? This is really, really hard to do. I have literally devoted my life's work to it. So why is it hard? I mean, it's hard because we're all busy, right? We're flooded with information about how we should be raising our kids. They have to be in language lessons, and they have to take instruments, and they need to be in sports. But they need a lot of free time, too, to play and not be directed what to do. And they need to learn how to get to be bored, but they have to practice their math because math is, like, crucial for the future. And they need to know about science and technology and art. And it is completely overwhelming, right? Parenting is hard because parenting has always been hard for all of eternity. It's just hard for different reasons in each generation. So I guess the one thing I want you all to hear and take away is that if parenting feels hard for you, it's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because parenting is hard. Unfortunately, we live in an age of social media, which would have us believe that parenting is easy for some people, and that they're getting it right, and that they can go like run a marathon and then bake homemade cupcakes, and meanwhile I'm home trying to get my young kids not to wipe their boogers on the wall. Okay, so it's hard for all of us. So I hope that if you're here because you're having a hard time getting calm in your home, look at this room, it's full. We're all struggling with this, okay? So I'm gonna pick up my notes off the floor. So parenting is especially hard when our children push our buttons, right? Does everybody know what I mean by this? When our kids push our buttons, they do something completely insane that if you saw it in a TV show, you'd be like, that's not a thing. Nobody does that. And yet our kids somehow manage to do it. And when they push our buttons, we get stressed and anxious and tense, and we lose it. And I would say that if there was one thing that more and more parents are coming to me with, asking for help and support around, it's that they're losing their temper with their children, right? This is sort of the thing of the modern generation, sort of, I'll explain that. But we are yelling at our kids more than ever. And even the New York Times, about 6 years ago, said that we are a generation that yells. Now, I sort of take issue with that because I think parents have been yelling at their kids since the beginning of time. It's just that parents also used to hit their kids a lot more. And the good news is we're not hitting our kids so much, and I'm sort of making light of that, but if you are hitting your children, please, let's get you some help because that's absolutely not okay under any circumstance. We're still just as stressed as ever, and in some cases even more stressed, and so we're screaming at our kids, we're shouting at them, we're slamming doors, we're snapping, we're muttering really rude comments under our breath, throwing things occasionally, right? These are all forms of losing it with our kids. And parents know that we don't want to do this. This is not the kind of relationship we want to have with our children. And we are really one of the first generations of parents that as a culture are thinking very carefully about the kind of relationships we want to have with our kids. Now, many of us had parents who were very intentional about parenting and really wanted to connect with their children and develop a strong relationship, and many of us just didn't. But either way, it wasn't in the cultural conversation. The word parenting didn't even exist until the 70s. What did you call a mom in the 50s who didn't work outside the home? Housewife. Her job was to take care of the house, right? Now we're stay-at-home moms. So there's been a huge shift in the conversation, and I know there are lots of dads in the room, and I don't want to make you feel like you're not in this conversation, because you are, but there's still a huge gender gap. So we parents really feel this pressure to have a good relationship with our kids. And our kids are pushing our buttons, and we're exhausted, and we're overwhelmed, and we end up losing it. Okay, so then what do we do? Well, if the kid's behavior is leading us to lose our tempers, then it makes sense that we should get the kid to stop doing that obnoxious stuff, right? That's logical. Like when the kids are well behaved, we don't lose it, so let's just get them to behave better. And so we work on strategies and tricks and star charts and all of this to try to get our children to behave better, which is an important goal, right? We want to continue to teach our kids how to be functional members of society. And I talk a lot about some of these strategies in Ready, Set, Breathe. But let me tell you about the time that I tried to get my kids to use a star chart. So they were like 3 and 2, and there was something we were working on. I don't know, it was like breakfast. I wanted them to actually eat the food in front of them, something like that. And so I was so proud of myself. I remember I showed them the star chart, and I explained how it was going to work, and I had this whole package of those gold foil stars. And I'm like, they're going to want the stars, and then at the end of the week, we're going to get like a treat, whatever it is. So my daughter totally refuses to eat her breakfast, my older daughter. And I'm like, but if you don't eat your breakfast, you don't get the star. And I'm thinking she's going to be really upset she didn't get the star. And she looks at me with the sweetest voice, and she goes, "That's okay, Mommy. I'll get it someday." Didn't care. Like the star meant nothing to her. And then I look over at my other daughter, and she's eating the stars. They're all over her tongue. I was like, so much for the star chart. So look, we're going to keep working on these strategies. But there's just a couple of problems with him, saying that we'll stop losing it when our kids start behaving better, right? First of all, little kids are insane and unpredictable, okay? And it's not their fault. They literally don't have a prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that helps you not freak out when your potatoes are touching your peas on the plate, right? This is the part of our brain that helps us manage our emotions, plan ahead, stick to the plan, respond when things don't go well our way. Little kids literally don't have that part yet. In fact, neuroscientists think that part of our brain doesn't fully develop until we're in our 20s, which is why we still see college students making terrible life choices, right? Because that part of their brain is still growing. So, number one, we can't expect our kids to behave well all the time because they're just not capable of it. Number two, it is always a terrible choice to make our behavior dependent on somebody else's. What do we say to our kids? You can't control what somebody else does, you can only control what you do, right? My kids love it when I say that to them. So we have to focus on ourselves, right? It really starts with us. We are responsible for the calm in the house. Now that's not to say that if your child is acting up or throwing a tantrum or melting down in the middle of the dairy aisle that it's your fault. That's not at all what I'm saying. They're going to do that regardless. What I'm saying is that you set the baseline for calm. Your kids are never going to get any calmer than you do. So if you're freaking out, they're going to be up here. And if you can come down here and get a little calmer, they'll come down closer. And when they're in the middle of a meltdown, the calmer we can stay, the sooner they're going to get through it, right? It's almost like our prefrontal cortex is acting for theirs because they don't have one yet. So we're modeling the behavior we want them to have. And imagine, when you're freaking out and then everybody around you is freaking out, you can't get calm that way, right? But when you're freaking out and then somebody near you is just like they're okay, it helps you get calm and regulate yourself. Okay. We've all had the experience of staying calm when our kids are a mess, right? Can every one of you, hopefully every one of us, can think of at least one time when the kids were a mess and hopefully we didn't get sucked into it. And maybe it's because we slept well the night before, maybe you got up early and had some time to like drink a cup of coffee and a few minutes of quiet and the cat didn't barf on the rug and everybody's behaving and it's all okay. And your kids come down and they go at you with their antics. We'll talk about those antics. And you don't lose it. Can everybody hopefully think of like one time at least when that happened? Okay. So that's great, but the problem is it can feel very unpredictable. You never quite know when you're going to be able to stay calm in the face of your kids' chaos. So we want to actually make it more predictable, more calm, and more likely that you're going to stay calm. Because what happens for so many of us is, you know, we slept late or we didn't sleep at all, and then we get up and we're worried about something for work, or the babysitter just called and she can't make it, and then our parents are nagging us about something and we forgot to pay a bill, and all these things are happening, and the kid walks in, and maybe they're being really annoying, or maybe they just kind of look at us and ask for some milk, and that's enough to send us over the edge, and we lose it, right? So that's what we want to not have happen. So let's talk about the way I think about all of this is instead of saying, I need my kid to stop pushing my buttons, what I think about is we need to make our buttons less pushable, right? This is us taking responsibility for our behavior and controlling what we can. So the reason our buttons get bigger and more sensitive and brighter and hotter and like they migrate to like right here, like it's a big red button. Your kid's like, I'm gonna push that. I am gonna push that button. How many of you have ever been in an elevator with a kid? Right? Are they like, oh, that's a button. It's totally not interesting to me. I'm not going to push. They go for the red emergency one. And we all know why it's down low, because it has to be. But I'm like, really, guys? Could you not make it red? You know, and so that's what it's like, really, when we are already sort of triggered. That's the word we're going to talk about a lot today, is our buttons become so sensitive and big and glowing. And of course, your kids know it, right? They know, and their little finger fits your button perfectly. And they know exactly which one to go for. Why? Because they're evolutionarily designed to keep track of us because we are the ones who keep them alive. Right? When they were like little cave babies and we were cave people, they were designed to know exactly where we were and to know how to get our attention at all times because we were the ones who were going to keep them from being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Okay? So, we want to make those buttons less pushable. And this really is possible, right? So we're going to talk about how to do that today. All right, let me just check. So this is the moment where I want to share with you my favorite parenting advice, which I totally cannot take credit for. How many of you have heard of Brene Brown? She's like kind of a pop star social worker. She's like the social worker that made it over into the popular world. And she's actually got a special on Netflix right now, which is totally awesome. So it's not about parenting, but it's really useful stuff. But her parenting wisdom that has always guided me is that we cannot give our children what we don't have. Now, this is both terrifying to me and also incredibly liberating, right? If you want your kid to speak Greek and you don't speak Greek, you're not going to be the one to teach them to speak Greek. So either let go of that dream or go find someone who speaks Greek and get them to talk to your kids. So if you want your kid, I really want my kids to grow up and be amazing cooks. I really do. Not on me. I don't cook. I don't like cooking. I don't want to be anywhere near the preparation of food, but fortunately I married a man who can do this. He's going to be the ones to teach them how to cook. And when I heard Brene Brown say that, I was like, oh, I can let this go. So anytime you can let something go, that's good. But if we want calm in our house and we want our kids to be calm, it has to start with us. We cannot give our kids what we don't have. So if we're walking around a triggered ball of anxiety and stress and worry and tension, and we want calmer children, we need to start working on ourselves. Okay. So does that make sense to everybody? You with me right now? Okay. So in the book, I talk a lot about triggers. Triggers are anything that make it more likely that we're going to lose it with our kids. There is a very long list of triggers in the book. It is so long that my editor was like, that's boring, and you have to put it in the back as an appendix. And I was like, thanks. But just like we are dealing, the reason I share that is because I want y'all to know, like really Captain Obvious over here, we're dealing with a lot of stress in our lives, right? And sometimes it's a huge deal, like somebody getting injured in an accident, and sometimes it's just sort of the daily grind. And all of this makes our buttons bigger and brighter and more sensitive. But the research I did, the work I'm very interested in is, what do we do to cool our buttons down? How do we make them smaller? How do we get them to a point where they're almost hidden from our children? So they come out with their little fingers around and there's nothing to push. Or maybe they have to push 15 times instead of just once to get us going. And so when I first started in the world of parenting research, I told you guys I'd done a lot of time studying and researching mindfulness and practicing mindfulness, and I actually went away on a 3-day silent retreat. And I will tell you, I came back from that and I didn't have any buttons. I was like the Dalai Lama. They came at me and I was like, I'm good. I can handle this. It lasted about 24 hours. Then I was back to me. But I wanted to find options for everybody that don't involve going away and sitting in the woods quietly for 3 days. Although if you can do it, you totally should. But I haven't been able to do it since. That was years ago. And so I was like, I need stuff that is evidence-based, so there's actually some research behind it, that's effective, right? We want it to actually work. And that is feasible for any parent, regardless of whether or not you have a parenting partner, how much money you may or may not have, how many kids you have, what your work schedule is. We need these practices that are going to calm us down and help us stay calm, regardless of what your situation is. And the good news is I found them. They exist, and they don't involve getting manicures. But if you want to do that, that's fine. So a lot of this falls suspiciously under the realm of self-care. And if that's a phrase that makes you all feel twitchy, it also makes me feel twitchy. So in the book, I refer to it as shit you have to do if you don't want to lose your shit with your kids. Now, you guys know a lot of this. So what are the things that I'm likely to talk about in the book? Sleep is a huge one, right? Huge. The way I talk about sleep is, if you haven't slept the night before, it's like getting up in the morning and try to drive in your car with a flat tire. It is very likely that you could still get to where you're going. The drive is going to be extremely bumpy and unpleasant, and you're likely to break something along the way or lose your mind. So sleep is a requirement. What else? Coffee. I literally talk about that in the book. If you're not a coffee drinker, God bless you, I don't understand how that works, but yes. But come on, guys. Exercise, right? So one of the ways that our buttons get huge and tense and stressed out is when our stress hormones are increased in our body. Exercise literally gets the stress hormones out of your body. So if we get one more. Diet. Diet's a huge one. I like to get really hopped up on sugar. That's actually not helpful. You should not do that. The other one I talk about, I have 11 practices, but the other one that nobody's mentioned yet is support. Having a lot of help. We can't parent alone. We weren't designed to parent alone. And I think especially moms it's like, it's cool, I'm a stay-at-home mom, and since I'm not working, I don't need any help. And I'm like, really? Tell me another job on the planet that you're supposed to do all alone 24/7. Tell me about that job, because I've never heard of it. But we're going to talk about a completely different one today that I know none of you have been thinking about. And if some of you have been thinking about it, please tell me, and then I'll come over and high-five you. That nobody thinks about relative to parenting. And it has been a game changer for me. It has absolutely changed my experience of parenting and life and lowered my stress and made me far more calm. And I'm talking about doing one thing at a time. And whenever I talk about this, decreasing the multitasking in our life and focusing on one thing, I see moms whose eyes look at me with suspicion, and they're like, Are you insane? I will never get anything done. I understand. We're going to talk about this. But let me explain first. So our culture loves multitasking. How many of you have ever applied for a job that said ability to multitask required? Right? We're literally like, this is a skill you should cultivate. That is the worst advice ever, okay? And let's talk about why. First of all, multitasking is not a thing. It's not something we can do. It's like a phrase we've come up with to delude ourselves into thinking that we're being all like adulty and effective and awesome and getting stuff done. It's not a thing our brains are capable of doing. What researchers call it is task switching, because our brains are literally jumping from one thing to another, and there's a lag in between. And in that lag, we drop, break, lose, forget things, send out tweets and texts we shouldn't send out, say things we don't mean, and lose our shit at our kids. So we do it because we think it's making us more effective, but it's not. It's actually doing the opposite, and we're going to talk about exactly how that happens. So let's talk about exactly what I mean when I say multitasking. I mean two different things. One is when our body is doing one thing and our brain is doing something else. And the perfect example that I'm sure everybody in the room can relate to is when you've driven somewhere and you get to the place and you're like, whoa, I have no idea how I got here. Right? Have we all done that? Okay. So our bodies are amazing and they can drive, and our brains are thinking about something else. The other thing is when you're literally trying to do 4 things at once. And the perfect example is the kitchen at night for most parents. Generally speaking, you're like trying to stir the mac and cheese, and you've got one kid in the toilet screaming for you to come wipe them, and then you've got another kid who's asking you for help on their spelling words, and then your phone is lighting up with text from your boss, and you're trying to do all of it. And really what's going to happen is you're going to lose your shit, right? Now let's talk about why though. Why? Because you're stressed, okay? Now lots of people throw around the word stress, and they don't define it, and they're like, you know, it's that feeling when you're stressed. And I'm like, that's not helpful. So I define stress as the thought, belief, or perception that you cannot handle whatever is going on. Now sometimes, you're right. You are overwhelmed by life, and there's too much going on, and there are big things, and you can't handle it, and you need to get some help. But sometimes, you've just made yourself feel stressed because you're trying to handle too much. I can stir the pasta, I can wipe a kid's tushy, I can help with spelling words, and I can answer texts from my boss. I just can't do them all at once. So when I'm trying to do all these things at once, it increases my stress, which literally floods your body with stress hormones. That's why they're called stress hormones, which puts you into basically fight or flight mode, right? So your heart starts racing. Maybe if it's really bad, you know, your pupils dilate, your muscles get tense. And this is the thing that nobody talks about in fight or flight mode, which I call fight, flight, freeze, or freak out mode, is that your body literally diverts the resources away from your prefrontal cortex. Because if you're running from a saber-toothed tiger, you don't need to be able to do calculus problems. And so this part of our brain that's like, hey, calm down, take a breath, slow down, you can handle this, goes offline. And the back part of our brain, this lizard part of our brain, survival mode, is like, okay, something's wrong, everybody freak out. But see, when you're with a kid, you can't fight them, really. We're unlikely to like get into a duel with our kids, although that does sound kind of awesome sometimes. You can't run away from them. Some people do freeze up, but often not. And so you're left with all this tension, and your body's going, oh my God, freak out, we gotta do something. And so you lose it with your kids. So there's actually like a hormonal, biological thing going on here. But maybe we could avoid all of this by just doing one thing at a time. Because then what we might learn is, oh, I actually can handle what's going on, right? So when we have too many balls in the air, it increases the likelihood that we're worried we're going to drop a ball. And then that brings up our stress, and really all we have to do is put one ball down. Is everybody with me so far? Okay. There's other reasons why multitasking is not awesome. When we are doing too many things, we are far less likely to realize that we're about to lose it. We all have tells. We all have little signals that our body gives us that we're on the edge of losing it with our kids. My tells are that my shoulders go way up, and I start answering my children in one-word clipped answers. Yes, no, fine, okay. When I hear myself doing that, I'm like 5 seconds away from like straight up screaming at them. So when I can notice these things happening, I take a step back, I put my hands on a flat surface, usually the kitchen counter, and I literally start taking deep breaths. Because breathing is the one aspect of our flight or fight reaction that we can intentionally interrupt. And when you slow down and take deep breaths, it's like sending a message to your body saying, everything's okay. You don't need to freak out. I can't slow down my heart rate. I can't make my eyes dilate or whatever the word is, but I can slow down my breathing. And that literally calms down my system. But if I'm so busy doing 27 things at once, I never realize I'm about to lose it, and I can't interrupt that cycle. Does that make sense? The other reason multitasking is a problem for parents is because we lose the chance, we miss out on the chance to come up with a creative solution to a problem. If you're busy doing 28 million things, you're just going to sort of get in some power struggle, bicker fight with your kid and not realize that there may be a way to get you both out of this. So here's the example I like to use. When my daughter was 3 years old, she decided she wasn't going to eat eggs. Eggs was like one of 4 things she actually ate, so I really needed her to keep eating eggs. And we got in the power struggle, and I was like, you gotta eat the eggs. She's like, I'm not gonna eat the eggs. And went back and forth, and then one day I was like, oh, she really likes Caillou. Is Caillou still on the air? That little bald, like whiny kid? No, he's actually more like this. So I was like, Caillou loves eggs. I have no idea if this is true or not, I don't know. And she's like, really? And so for years we called them Caillou eggs. I think she was like 8 years old, and she's like, Mommy, Caillou eggs aren't really a thing, are they? And I was like, nope, not a thing, not at all. And she ate the eggs. So that is the kind of creative, like little parenting hacks that no parenting expert or book could ever tell you. But I have so many amazing stories of parents who were like, oh, I just put stickers on the floor and told my kid it was hot lava on the way to the bathtub, and now he gets in the bathtub. And I was like, how did that work? Because getting in the bathtub is basically like getting in hot lava. But she didn't tell the kid that. And somehow she made this game and got her kid to get in the bathtub. I could never have come up with that because I don't know her son, right? And so when we're not multitasking, when we're really just doing one thing at a time and focused on our kids, we're much more likely to come up with these really quirky, creative solutions that are so unique to each family that you're never going to read about in a book. And the last reason that multitasking really ramps up our stress and makes parenting harder is the more we're multitasking, the more likely we are to miss out on those small, beautiful moments. The moments that really get us through the day. And I remember this moment, I still get a little teary-eyed when I think about it. It was like a nothing moment. My kids were really young, I had postpartum anxiety, I was a mess, they were like 2 and 1, and they were sitting on the couch just playing with their stuffed animals together, and like the sunlight was streaming in, and my house was a little bit clean because the cleaning lady had come. It was like a Pottery Barn commercial. And somehow I had the presence to stop and just look at them. And they weren't fighting, and nobody was crying. And that moment is blazed in my brain. What's the word? It's stuck in my mind. I will always remember it. And when they're making me nuts, I kind of recall that moment. And if I had been running around like a crazy woman unloading the dishwasher obsessively, which is sort of my thing when I'm anxious, I always go for the dishwasher, I would have missed it. And I'm sure I've missed so many others. But when we're not multitasking, we can see those moments, and those moments matter. They get us through the hard times of parenting. So hopefully I've convinced you by now that multitasking is terrible. It makes it far more likely we're going to screw something up or forget something or attach the wrong spreadsheet to an email or leave our keys somewhere that we can't find them or get in a car accident. And it makes us far more likely to lose it with our children. So now that I've left you on that totally depressing note, let's talk about how to single task more, which is the word I use for doing just one thing at a time. So the first step is just to realize, let's start to change our mindset around multitasking. Because right now it's I am multitasking, I'm being effective and efficient and getting everything done. No, please, let's not do that. Let's remember that multitasking is an option, but we want it to be the exception rather than the rule, okay? So it's really not the goal. The second step is to notice when we're multitasking, because most of us do it so often all the time, we don't even realize we're doing it. And remember, it can be as basic as your body is doing one thing and your brain is doing something else, which is basically the constant human experience. So if you feel like this happens to you all the time, it's not because there's anything wrong with you, it's because our brains were literally wired to think all the thoughts all the time. Our brains are here constantly remembering, thinking ahead, wishing, regretting, planning, all these things, that's what they're wired to do. So it's not that your brain is messed up, it's just doing what a human brain is meant to do. And often this is good, right? If we remember that our kid has a peanut allergy and plan ahead and bring our nut-free cupcake to the birthday party, then we avoid a meltdown and anaphylactic shock. So both of that is excellent. But when our brains are constantly remembering and planning ahead, we go into overload, okay? So the goal is to start to notice when you are multitasking. And the really obvious times are when you're in the kitchen with the noodles and the kids and everything going on. But can you also notice when your brain gets distracted? The next step is to decide, is this a good time to multitask or not? And there are actually some times when it's fine. So how do you know? One, if there are no strong emotions involved. So if you are feeling tense or stressed or angry, or your kid is tense or stressed or angry, do not multitask. Okay, it's not going to work. You are far more likely to send you're already in sort of a little bit of fight or flight mode, and when you add one more thing to your plate, you're going to flip out and lose it with your kid. And if your kid is having a meltdown and you're trying to do 27 things, you're going to increase their stress and the meltdown will go on even longer. So if there are any strong emotions involved, you want to do one thing at a time, and sometimes the only thing you can do is breathe. Like, you need to make it that basic. The other time is if there's anything at stake. So if there could be any bad outcomes to any of the multiple things you are doing, don't multitask. And the classic example is driving and being on your phone. And just a couple of weeks ago, NPR ran a piece saying that the rate of pedestrian death by motor vehicle is increasing dramatically. There are two reasons. One is a lot more of us are driving SUVs, and when you hit someone with an SUV, they're far more likely to die. The second is because both drivers and pedestrians are staring at their phones and not seeing each other. And we all know this has happened right here in Boston. I can tell you the intersections in my town in Newton where it's happening. So when you're on your phone in the car, just don't multitask, because the potential outcome if you screw it up is really bad. But, I knit in front of the TV. Worst outcome there is I drop a stitch or I miss a scene on NCIS. Okay, guess what? We live in an age of Netflix. I can rewind and see it again. It's amazing. Literally, there's nothing that bad that could go wrong. I fold laundry while listening to an audiobook. Again, totally fine. But if there's a higher stake situation, if you're working on an important work document, if you're trying to help your kid with something important, terrible time to multitask. And the third time when it doesn't make sense to multitask, and this is going to kill all of you, but it's true, is really anytime you're with your kids. It doesn't work. And if you think about multitasking as like, how many tabs do I have open on my computer? So maybe hopefully you have just one open. But when your kid walks in the room, they basically open up like 27,000 tabs, and if you're not careful, your computer will start smoking out the back. So my advice that I give to parents is either pay attention to your kids or ignore them. There really is no middle space, and we'll talk about that. And I'm not talking about like hostile ignoring, like I'm going to stare at you and not talk to you. I'm just saying either be with your kids or take space from them. And we're going to talk more in a minute about how to do that. Okay. So the 3 times you don't want to multitask: when there are strong emotions involved, when there's something big at stake, and when you're with your children. And I know the parents in the room are like, but I'm with my children a lot, and I need to do other things in life except pay attention to that. So we're going to talk about that. So I want to bring this back to the time of a tantrum, right? So your kid is having a meltdown. Let's talk about why it makes a difference to multitask or not. So your child is having a meltdown, and it's like the 80th meltdown of the day, and you are exhausted. You're done. So what is going through your mind? Maybe it's some version of, I can't deal with this right now. This kid needs to freaking stop. I'm exhausted. I'm done. Like, enough already. Maybe it's, is there something wrong with my child? Is this normal to have this many meltdowns? Why aren't all the other kids having meltdowns? Nobody else's kids. I saw those kids at pickup. They weren't freaking out. Is there something wrong with my kid? Do I need to take them to a specialist? And then there's us. Like, am I doing something wrong as a parent? Should I be able to prevent this meltdown? If I had done something better, would this not have happened, right? All of those 3 things are multitasking. Your brain is going off in another worried direction, which is increasing your stress. So what are we doing instead? We're saying, okay, it's another meltdown. Here I am. All right, what do I need to do? Is this a meltdown or a tantrum, for example? A meltdown is what I define as a situation where your kid loses it because their basic needs haven't been met. They're hungry, they're tired, they're exhausted, they're scared, they're stressed. If you think that's what's going on, give them what they need. Go snuggle them, go feed them, sing a song, read a book, put them to bed, whatever you need to do. I don't think you're reinforcing like the meltdown behavior. You're teaching them that when they need something, you're going to give it to them. Now, if they're having a tantrum because they're not getting a cookie, you don't give them the cookie and you ignore it. Because we don't want them to learn that every time they don't get what they want, they can like lose it and we're going to give in, right? Now, sometimes, as we were talking about, what looks like a tantrum is actually a meltdown because you say no to the cookie and then like the whole like situation comes crumbling down because they've had a long day at school and they're wiped. And then you just do the best you can to like take care of them and get them through the night. But no matter what, you don't give them the cookie, right? We learn, okay. So, but if you can sort of get calm in the face of the meltdown, and just be like, okay, this is what's happening now. Stay calm with your kid. Your calm nature will bring them down off the meltdown, and it's your best chance at figuring out what's going on and coming up with a creative solution. Like, hey, do we need to go outside and walk around? Or do I need to rock the baby in a different way? Or hey, I haven't sat on this bouncy ball holding this baby in a while. Maybe that will calm them down. Or like, oh, there's another adult in the house. I'm going to give the kid to that person and go outside and take some deep breaths. So when you can just sort of, okay, we're having a meltdown, this happens, and just be present and notice, that's your best chance of getting out of it with like sort of the least amount of angst and making it worse. Does that make sense? Okay, so I've told you I just want you to do one thing at a time as often as possible. So most of you have spent the past 3 or 4 decades of your life practicing multitasking. I know I did, right? This is what we were taught. And so I'm asking you to change a long entrenched habit that your mind wants to do anyways. This is a very big ask. And let's remember, the whole reason we're doing this is to get your buttons smaller and dimmer and less sensitive and less pushable. And this is going to work when you're with your kids, and it's also going to work the rest of your workday or wherever you are in the rest of your life, so that when you get with your kids, you're going to be less stressed out. So how do we do this? So when I used to go to a lot of talks, here's what I would do. I'd be like, oh, that's good advice. I know that's exactly what you're all thinking right now. That's great advice. I'm totally going to do that. And then I would go home and absolutely not do it, because as long as things were okay, why do I need to change anything? So within a day or two, the kid melts down again, and then I'm like, oh, what did that lady say? What's that thing I'm supposed to do? I got to do it now. But the thing is, we can't change habits in a crisis. We just can't. It's not a thing people can do. It's like learning to speak a new language. When you're really in a crisis, you always revert back to your native language. So I want you guys to start practicing this when it's easy. Here's how we do it. I want you to pick 1 or 2 things you do every day, hopefully something you enjoy, right? We don't want to start with the hard stuff, like life is hard enough. Don't pick something you hate. Pick something you enjoy and just pay attention to it. Just notice what you're doing. Your mind is going to wander after about 2 seconds. That's okay. Come back to the thing you're doing. And if this sounds suspiciously like meditation to some of you, it essentially is, right? I think of meditation, at least very basic mindfulness meditation, as practicing single tasking. Because we're noticing our breath, and then I have 10 minutes, good to know. And then as soon as our mind wanders, we come back to our breath, right? So my 2 things that I do every single day, almost every day, that I pay attention to are showering and reading to my kids. Because, like, first of all, a shower should be a time of relaxation. I mean, for those of you with, like, toddlers, it's probably not. But my kids are old enough now that they mostly leave me alone when I'm in the shower. And it's like I have hot water, and my soap smells good, and I should come out of a few minutes in the shower feeling at least a little bit calmer. But if I'm not careful, I come out of the shower completely worked up into a lather, no pun intended, because I've been worrying about, like, did I make the dentist appointment, and did I pay the bills, and when is this next editing deadline? And I'm like more stressed out than when I went into the shower, and that's not helpful because I literally can't make a list in the shower, so I shouldn't be worrying about these things in there. And here's the other thing, I can very easily get to the end of my shower, and I have no idea if I washed my hair. It's wet, but I'm like, I don't even know if I did that part. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, no idea. So that's why, when I pay attention when I'm in the shower, I come out of the shower knowing that I'm fully washed and I'm much calmer. And let's talk about reading to your kids. Now, I don't mean to brag or anything, but I have this amazing skill. I can sit with my daughters, have a book open, my eyes are scanning every single word, the sounds come out of my mouth. We get to the end of the book and I have no idea what I just read to them. Because my mind has been a million miles away. I'm stressing about something I didn't do. I'm suddenly remembering an ex-boyfriend, like where did that guy come from? Like my brain is like all over the place. And there's 2 problems with that. One is it's incredibly embarrassing when your kids ask you a question about something you just read to them and you're like, I have no idea. I just don't know what happened in that book. But the other problem, it happens. The other problem is that, look, we know when we're with someone and they're not with us. You know, you can be sitting right next to someone and you know when their mind is a million miles away and it feels terrible. And so I come out of this moment that should have been a time of real connection with my daughters, and I feel stressed, and they feel weird, and we both feel disconnected, and we don't know why. Well, I know why, but they don't know why, and I can't really explain it to them because it's a long story and it's awkward. But, so we're missing out on that opportunity, right? So pick 1 or 2 things that you do every day and just practice it. And the classic example from every mindfulness course is somebody goes away, and then they come back, and they're like, well, I picked drinking coffee, and what I realized is I don't actually like coffee. Now, this is a thing that will never happen to me, but some people, when you start noticing some of the things you do in a daily life, you might start to change some habits. So, practicing. We also have to talk about our phones, We have to. Look, I have loved smartphones before they were even a thing. How many of you remember Inspector Gadget? Right? The cartoon? There's a new version, and it's awesome. But do you remember Penny? She had her book. She had so Inspector Gadget was like this incompetent investigator, and he was like a total idiot, but he had these awesome, what do you call them? Things. And he had this niece, Penny, who had this amazing book, and she could open it up, and it was like a computer inside. And I was like, I don't care about the helicopter thing coming out of Inspector Gadget's hat. I want that book. Well, guess what? Now we have it, right? We have our iPhones and our smartphones. These are the biggest problems with multitasking, and I guarantee you want to lose your shit at your kid, pull out your phone and start staring at it. And then you're like watching some awesome like Jimmy Fallon video, and it's far more awesome than reality in that moment. And so you're like, this is great. And your kid comes along with a really benign request, but that's not as awesome as Jimmy Fallon. And so you don't want to deal with it, right? And so then you snap at them. Really start paying attention to how often you are snapping at your kids when your iPhone is around. Your smartphone is around. It's a huge problem. And really what you have to do is actually get it out of the room. Researchers have found that if our phone is anywhere near us, we can't stay away from it. And it's not our faults. Really, it's not. Some of the smartest minds in the world are being paid obscene amounts of money to sit at their desks in Silicon Valley and figure out how to get us to spend more and more time on our phones. Because the more time we spend on our phones using their apps, the more of their ads we see, and the more of the ads we see, the more likely we are to buy the stuff, and then the company will pay for the ad to go on the app, and then the app gets money. And literally, I read this. There's a great book by Catherine Price called How to Break Up with Your Phone. It's fantastic. You can get it at the library, at the bookstore. And one of the things she talks about, this is the level of research they're doing to get us to stare at our phones. They have found out, okay, so you go on Instagram, and you look at your little pictures and the likes. If they have a like pop up every time somebody likes your image, it's not as addictive as if they hold back all the likes and then dump like 10 likes on you all at once. I have no idea why my brain cares about that, but apparently it does. And they literally paid someone to test that and figure it out. Like it's that level that they're tuning our phones to keep our brains addicted. So it's not because we're weak or bad people, it's because they are really hard to get away from. But I promise you, getting away from your phone is one of the best things you can do to not lose it with your kids. And if you're really worried about missing an important message or something, wear a smartwatch. And don't put a bunch of games on it. Do not do that. But if you turn on the notifications, you won't miss an important call, right? But that's a powerful way to not lose it with our kids and get some space from our phones. So the last thing I want to leave you with is how to take space from your kids when you're actually with them, right? How to single task when you're with your kids. The first step is either pay attention to them or ignore them. This was from a writer named Catherine Newman. It was an article I read in the New York Times years ago, and it changed my parenting. So let me give you an example of a sick day. In my house, it used to be the sick day was that my kid would be here next to me, and I wouldn't really turn on the screen for her because I'd feel really guilty about that. And I'd have my computer in my lap, and so I'd sort of be playing like Connect 4 with her, and then I'm trying to send the emails in between, and then I'm like hitting reply when I should be hitting forward or whatever, and then she beats me at Connect 4, which really pisses me off. And so then I'm trying to go back and forth, and my stress is increasing, and I lose it with her. And then I read this article, and I was like, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. So now on a sick day, I'll put my kid in front of the TV, or if I can get her in a book, like somehow get her distracted for about 30 minutes. And I go off and do my own thing. And then I come back and I'm like, all right, let's read a book together, let's play a game, let's just sit here and bicker, like whatever we need to do. We're just gonna pay some attention to each other. And then after we're done with that, I put her in front of the TV again. Or I let her have some iPad time, or we turn on a podcast or an audiobook, and I go away. And then I come back. Now, it's harder with little kids, it really is, because 2-year-olds have no boundaries or self-awareness or any sense of what's reasonable in this world. But you can start to train them. And the way you train them is when they are playing by themselves or doing well, you don't go near them. Don't touch them, don't make eye contact, don't even look at them. Seriously, don't even back into the room. But if you've got a kid who is playing happily or even being bored without complaining, don't get involved in their play. This is important not only for your sanity, but it's important for the kid, because that time alone is when our children learn how to be bored. It's when they learn how to get to know themselves, they can think creatively. Like, this is really important, and I can't tell you how many parents I see, and I used to do this all the time, who are like, oh, you're building a tower, let me help you with that tower. No, don't do that. And if your children start bickering, let them try to work it out. You don't have to get involved every time. Because believe me, they'll come to you when they need you. They will. You can try, don't worry about that, they'll come. The other way to single task when you're with your kids is let them wait. I can't tell you how many parents I see that they're cooking a meal or they're reading a book or they're doing something. And again, with little kids, this is harder, but you start training them earlier. And they come up and ask you for something and you say, I hear what you're asking for. I will help you when I'm done. They're not going to like this. This will make them unhappy. It's okay. It's not our job to make our kids happy, right? It's our job to help them grow into functional human beings, and functional human beings know how to wait. So it really is okay. Like if I'm cooking the meal and they ask me a question, I used to be like, oh yeah, I can totally help you with this while I stir this pasta. And now I say, you know what? I'm making dinner. Let's talk about it when we're done. And I probably have to say that to them 10 times, which one might argue is like I could have just answered the question, really, but I'm trying to train them to wait. Tolerate their boredom. So let your kids be bored. There's nothing wrong with being bored. I mean, it's unpleasant. And actually, most of us adults can't do it anymore. Like, you know what we used to do in line at the grocery store? Be bored, right? We'd like stare at the terrible magazines from the National Enquirer and look at the candy bars and be bored. And now we all whip out our phones, right? We're terrible being bored. Boredom is super important, right? It's where kids learn to tolerate uncomfortable emotions, which we need them to do. They come up with creative solutions. And so if your kid comes to you and says they're bored, there are a lot of great answers, all of which my kids totally love. I say, hi, bored. Nice to meet you. I'm Mom. They love that one. Or I can say, okay, thanks for the update. Well, if you're bored, you can help me unload the dishwasher. I really have a thing about dishwashers. You can clean up your room. Okay, well, I'm sure you'll figure something else out. But I don't get involved in their boredom. I don't care if they're bored. It's fine. And if they're really struggling because they're exhausted or hungry or something, I usually give them about 20 or 30 minutes to figure it out. And if they're still wandering around sort of pissed off, then maybe I'll help them. But let your kids be bored. Don't get involved in that. You go do your own thing. And my favorite advice, and this sort of goes back to what I was saying before, is from the actor Jack Black, which I never thought I'd get parenting advice from him. But I read it once and I was like, that's brilliant, is don't give a happy child ice cream. And what I would say is, just in general, if your kid is happy enough, don't get involved. I mean, and that's not to say you should never play with your child, because when you're ready to go play with them, they'll be there ready. But when you need your time to focus on the thing you're focused on, don't get involved in their stuff. They can be a little unhappy, right? We parents of this generation, we complain, and I do this too. My kid is so unhappy, they're really struggling. And we want them to be happy all the time. This is not our goal. This is not our job. And really, how many of you can honestly raise your hand and be like, I'm happy all the time? That is absolutely my experience of life. And that is a reasonable, like, no. Our kids, I don't care. Like, yes, of course I want my kid to be happy. I don't want to sound awful about it. But really what I want is for my child to tolerate difficult emotions without losing their minds, because that's part of life. And so when we are able to take some space from our kids, let them struggle a little bit. I can't tell you how many times my kid comes to me with something she's fiddling with and she can't get it to work. And if I just make her wait 5 minutes because I need that 5 minutes to get myself together or finish stirring the noodles, she'll figure it out. And then she learns that it's okay to struggle a little bit and then she can figure it out on her own. So that's how we can get to a place where we're either ignoring our kids or paying attention to them. Does that make sense? So that's really my big advice for you guys. And I picked something that was not about like sleep and exercise, because those are crucially important. And I will tell you that exercising every day has been a game changer for me in my parenting. And I will now say to my kids, I'm going for a walk. You can come with me or not, but I will be far less cranky with you if I go for a walk. And my kids have even noticed this, and they'll be like, Mommy, you need to go for a walk today? And I'm like, no, I'm fine, you know? But I wanted, the reason I talked about single tasking is because I think it's something a lot of us aren't thinking about. And I will tell you, the more often in my day that I focus on doing one thing at a time, the more I get done, the more efficiently I get it done, and the far less likely I am to lose it with my kids. So that's my talk for today, and I would love to hear any questions or comments or ideas you all have.